So a few days ago I did a video of all the seeds that I'm sowing in January and February, and today I thought we'll do a bit of a sow along. You can see me actually sowing some of those seeds. I'll talk a little bit more about the different varieties, why I like them, things like that. But a lot of the details are in the previous video, so I'm not going to repeat all of that. You just refer back to those videos. There'll be a link in the description to those if you want to see that. All the data on everything that I'm sowing is also available, linked in the description. So what am I doing today? I'm going to do potatoes, super early potatoes. I'm going to do my first sowing of radish and turnips. Then I'm going to do some leafy brassica greens and the first of the red cabbages. And then I'm going to do a batch of lettuce for the polytunnel. So let's get sowing. So here's my first sowing of the year. These Charlotte potatoes. I know some people frown about this. These are a bit leggy, these chits, but I think they're fine. I always do them like this. I've never had a problem. Just for the early ones, you know, because they've been stored in the garage and just got a bit light deprived. So I'm just sowing them into these small containers, I think about 2 litres, something like that. And I'll just drop them in like that and cover them over. So there's very little to it. And so the reason I'm doing this is just space, because I've got plenty of space for a potato in a small container like this, and it will break surface inside in the conservatory in about 10 days, something like that, and it'll stay in here for probably another 2 or 3 weeks until it's probably about, you know, sort of this sort of high, that sort of high, so 9 inches or so, and then it'll get transplanted into its final container and it'll stay in the conservatory for the whole of its life probably, and it'll grow into a pretty big plant. So I'll put a cane in when I transplant this, and so I can just keep winding the new growth around the cane. And yeah, so hopefully we should get lovely early main crop bacon sized potatoes sometime in May. It's a really fun thing to do, and yeah, really productive as well when you're self-sufficient. So if you want to know more about how I grow potatoes, then take a look at my ebook link in the description, and take a look at the individual growing guide section, and just scroll down to potatoes, and they'll find all the tips and techniques and everything that I use, recommended varieties and all of that sort of thing. And my section is sort of potatoes for all seasons, which goes through all the different successions, basically how we have potatoes in abundance and good quality all year round. And so if you're interested in that, then take a look. There's lots more videos and things for you to check out there. Right, so we're on to the first sowing of the year, which is a really exciting sort of thing to do, and quite a nice range of things here. Basically, we've got brassicas, we've got lettuces, we've got turnips and radishes. So that's the first sowing. We're going to get on with some other things a bit later on in the month, but right now that's what we're doing. The brassicas will grow under lights actually for about 4 weeks after they've germinated, and then they'll go into the polytunnel for just a couple of weeks, and then they'll get planted out towards the end of February, maybe as late as early March, and they'll be under a low tunnel, under a couple of low tunnels actually, because quite a lot of them, and these are for harvest during the hunger gap. So we'll probably start harvesting about May, just as all of the other brassicas are starting to finish, and I'll show you the varieties in a minute. And these are just a small selection of lettuces which will probably go in a coal frame or in the polytunnel, just about 10 of each plant, and then there's just one brassica filling in an odd gap there, which is Kale. So, and then I don't know whether I've already mentioned, then we've got Tokyo Cross turnips there, 15 modules, 3 per module, and cherry bell radish there, and there's going to be 25 of those, again about 3 or 4 seeds per module. So We'll do these first and I'll talk a bit about them as I go. So I'm going to start off with this one, which I've not grown a lot of, but I kind of fancy just giving it a bit more of a try. And the general advice is not to plant these until sort of March, April time. That's just because they're going outside. And, you know, that's what these seed packets assume, that you're going to plant them in the ground outside. Well, I'm going to grow them, as I said, under grow lights. They're going to germinate in the heat of the house and then going to go under a low tunnel. So they're going to be just fine, I think. Although there is always just a chance that they'll go to seed. I don't really care about that. So I'm just going to sprinkle a few in here, which is the way I always do my brassicas. And then I'll prick them out in about 10 days time, probably, something like that. Got way too many, as I again often do. There's loads of seeds in that, so I'll throw those away. So next up are these little Brussels sprouts. Now, I was really pleased with these last year. These are called Long Island Improved, and they're really great. They're a small, compact, fast-growing plant, and they give a really prolific leaf harvest, which is what I want, in late April, May sort of time. And then they just keep on going. They might go to seed. This is the problem with all early brassicas. So natural time to go to seed is April. So in theory you plant them after April, and then they never go to seed. But when you sow them like I'm doing here, nice and early, I find that a few of them go to seed in kind of May sort of time maybe, and a few more in June. But generally speaking, you just get a really great harvest, and you're just treating them as a crop primarily for the hungry gap, and then you'll take them out and put something else in their stead. So provided you know what you're doing them for, you know, you're only doing them as this short harvest crop, which means you've got to plant a longer harvest crop in the middle of March, then that's fine, because otherwise you go like 2 or 3 months without your kales, and we don't want to do that. And it's just a lot more fun, I find, to do it that way. So the next up is Black Magic, and again this is a big favourite of ours. It's a Tuscan kale, a bit like Nero de Toscana, but Black Magic is just that little bit better, I think, in the UK climate, and it's just a bit darker green. It's really a lovely plant. Get myself all confused with these seed packets. So the next one is this Dwarf Green curly kale. Quite like Dwarf Green, and just happened to have this packet which came free with a magazine. So there's not many in it. Actually, there's 400 in it. That just shows how cheap these seeds are. And I just like the fact that you get a lot of these basic things, you know, free or at very low cost. As I say, these came free, I think, with Kitchen, you know, Grow Your Own magazine. And it just means you can play around a lot with these varieties and sort of see what, you know, how they grow at different times of year, at different planting densities, and, you know, different conditions like low tunnels and cold frames and polytunnels and things. And it's just a lot of fun to try them all out and see what happens, which is what I've been doing for quite a few years now, and learnt lots of really unusual and interesting tips and tricks along the way. And the next one is Dazzling Blue, and that is from Real Seeds. It's one of the few actually that I have stuck with from Real Seeds. So originally I had loads of enthusiasm for them, and then gradually over the years I found varieties that I prefer to the Real Seeds ones, and so I've ended up really mainly with Dazzling Blue as the standout performer. That is kind of a fairly unique variety, and the nice thing about this is it's just really colourful, and I like really colourful veggies. And then the next one, talking colourful veggies, is this lovely red cabbage, red fugo. And the reason I like this one is because it's a really early red cabbage by comparison with a red drumhead, which I will also be sowing, but I'll be sowing that in March. So this just gives me red cabbages a couple of months earlier, which is great. We're a really big fan of red cabbage. Now these red fugo are moderately expensive seeds. You don't get very many. I think there's only 50 in a pack. So whilst I was probably doing 40 seeds in one of these modules to make sure I got really good germination, with the red fugo I'm only doing sort of 10, and I only want like 5 plants or something like that. So save some of those for later on in the year. And then the last one I'm doing is Scarlet, which is as the name suggests, a nice red kale. So there's loads of those, so I'm going to get quite a few in my hand. And I will probably only be doing about 6 of each of these in the end. So, but I might do a few for other allotment holders. So there we go. I'm really pleased to get those done. Just really excited, as I always am, when I'm sowing seeds. So let's get all those out of the way. I've managed to get one packet. Oh, that's the dwarf green, right, that's good. So I'll just cover those with about 1 centimetre of compost, and they're done. So I was thinking also of doing these reflex kales, but I think I'll save those for a bit later. So if you want to know a bit more about growing brassicas, especially for the hunger gap, I've got a few things for you. So the first thing is in my book, you can take a look at the section on kale, and there's all the different successions of kale that I grow, including the first earlies, which are the ones that this video is all about, and all the other successions and hints and tips about growing and planting and pests and all of that sort of thing. And the other thing that I've got is in my year-round growing guide section, which is here. I've got 2 guides on brassicas. So there's a guide specifically to growing brassicas for the hunger gap, and that goes through all the different types of brassicas that I grow, including perennial kales, purple sprouting broccoli, Brussels sprouts for the leaves, spring cabbage, calabrese, kales and cauliflower. And this goes through month by month what you do in order to have a plentiful supply of all different types of brassicas. And then there's another year-round growing guide, and that one is specific to growing just the leafy brassicas. So yeah, take a look at those if you're interested. And again, you'll find lots more videos and things. Next ones I'm doing are the lettuces, and I'm doing my favourite varieties for spring, not summer really, because these won't last until summer, but they'll last well into May if I want them to. And so I'm going to do this one, which is canasta, and this is a fantastic kind of crunchy lettuce. It's almost like iceberg almost. It's not quite, but it's got a real good crunch to it, and an exceptionally crunchy rib. Very tasty and not very good over winter, so it's really nice to be sowing some of these. And this packet is a bit old now, so I'm putting in sort of 20 or 30 seeds, so I can be sure of getting 10. And you know, it doesn't really matter because I just have a huge number of seeds in that packet, so I give a lot of these away because, you know, there's thousands and thousands of seeds and I only need hundreds of seeds a year, so loads and loads of spare ones. Same with Grenoble Red, loads and loads of these. And the lettuces keep really well, so I tend to keep these packets going for maybe 2, maybe 3 even years. I don't know how long this Grenoble Red's been going, but it's at least 3 years. But at some point germination will just drop off a cliff, and then I'll just open my next packet. I always have a reserve packet in my store of pretty much everything. I just really don't like to run out of things. Now, red lettuces are, so this one is bijou, they just don't overwinter at all well. So I save these for spring. So this is my first, I've got no red lettuces in the ground to speak of. I've got sort of bronzy ones, quite a lot of those, but no really red ones. So I'm pleased to be getting a few of these, but I don't do very many of them because, you know, they're a bit bitter by comparison with the green lettuces and the bronzy lettuces. And for some reason I've got 2 seed packets in that packet. There's 2 of these little packets, and that generally means that one's a really old one, and for some reason I opened, maybe I didn't get very good germination on it, and then I forgot to throw it away. So I've got 2, which means I've got to sow a few from each, and I don't really mind that. Right, so that's done. And the next one is Riccia. I can't pronounce these long Italian sort of names, so I just pick a little bit of the name that I can almost pronounce. And this is a lovely lettuce. I'm actually eating this one right now, and it's kind of my favourite of the green lettuces. I did grow quite a lot of Smile last year, and it hasn't made the cut. This has replaced it. It's much crunchier, just tastier, and yeah, it's great. It's really great. Maybe I'll show you it when I finish. And I've got it actually under grow lights in this conservatory, but I've also got it in the polytunnel, and it's doing great. And it's the first of these kind of lollo types, green lollos, that has done really well for me. We tend to have quite a warmish, damp environment here in St Anne's. It's very rainy outside today and extremely mild, and it's just not great for lettuces at very low light levels. Well, a lot of mine tend to get some sort of disease. And then this is Navarra, and I'll show you it in a minute. I don't think I held it up, but it's one of my favourites. And again, this is a red lettuce, but it's not quite as red as that bijou. and so it's quite a lot sweeter. So I'm going to save those seeds because I'm running slightly short in that packet, and I do have a spare packet, I'm pretty sure, but just in case. So that's the Navara, absolutely gorgeous, and I've got one of those growing in the conservatory as well, so I'll show you that. Right, so that's all those done. So if you want to know more about growing salads and other salad ingredients, then I've got two things for you. So the first one is I've got a year-round growing guide, and this one takes you through all the different types of salad leaves that you can grow all year round. You know, lettuces, spinach, purslane, chicory, radicchio, etc., including lamb's lettuce and miner's lettuce, which were in the salad mixes that I did today. And it goes through all the best sort of sowing times and has a month by month gardening year for salads. So it tells you what to sow in each month, what you can harvest in each month, and all of that sort of thing. So I think that's pretty useful. I certainly use it myself. And I've also got individual growing guides for quite a lot of the salad ingredients, and you can take a look at those here, also in the book, and a big section on lettuce, because we are big lettuce fans, and all the successions of lettuce that I do, and how to sow them, prick them out, where to plant them, etc., etc., how to protect them from pests, spacings, all of that sort of thing. So loads of stuff, and I'm always expanding this information, so yeah, keep checking back. And now I'm going to switch over to the Tokyo Cross and the Cherry Bell. So I just do use my finger, I'm just popping a hole in about 1 centimetre deep. Honestly, it really doesn't matter how deep with these things, you know, as long as it's in the kind of region. If it was 15 millimetres, it would be fine. If it was 8 millimetres, it would probably be fine as well. And so the finger is a kind of perfect tool for the job. And I'm going to be doing, I think, 4 radishes and 3 turnips to each module. And again, I don't fuss over that too much, because if you happen to do, say, 3 radishes, all that would happen is they would just come ready for harvest just a little bit earlier than the ones that you did 4. And if you did some with 5, they would just come ready a little bit later than the ones that you did with 4. Same story with the turnips. So it does just give you like a slightly staggered harvest. So I'm doing Scarlet Globe. There's lots of these similar sorts of varieties. I like these early on in the year. They just seem to do a bit better than something like French breakfast. Although I will be doing some French breakfast in February and March. And we've actually got some of these Scarlet Globe ready for harvest right now, actually. Might show you those as well. And they're looking really nice. So I'll just drop 5 in there by accident and say I don't really care about that. 3 went in that one. 4, 5, 3. I don't really want 2, so if there's 2, it's not worth the compost, so I will put an extra 1 in or 2 in. But the point is, you really don't need to kind of worry exactly about what you're doing. You can just be fairly quick about it. Seeds want to grow. Almost always works out okay no matter what you do, provided you don't overwater. And actually overwatering, especially when you're growing inside like I am at the moment, is a no-no, because what's likely to happen is you're going to get loads and loads of those horrible pesky little fungus gnats, and provided you don't oversaturate your compost. If you kind of, as some people seem to do, I never understand why they would do this, but they really soak their compost really, so it's fully saturated, like water and water and water it, or lay it in water until it soaks up from the bottom. I mean, that is probably great if you're doing it in July and you're going to put them out in the sun. But please don't do that at this time of year. You really don't need to wet your compost that much. You just need to sprinkle a little bit of water on, and little and often let your surface of the compost dry out a bit, and in between waterings, and then you won't get many. You might get the odd one, but you won't get many fungus gnats. Certainly you'll be able to keep it under control with just a bit of yellow sticky paper kind of clipped somewhere close to your seed trays. And it's funny because as I'm talking about this, there's like one little fungus gnat kind of just flying around near me. So that probably means that I've overwatered something, and it's probably the lettuce that I was just talking about. So Tokyo Cross is my favourite turnip. Looks beautiful, really sweet, and yeah, so it's great. So that is all done. I am 100% planted up. And I'm just going to get a little bit of compost and cover these over. So I do have a year-round growing guide for turnips. That goes through all the different successions, including the first earlies, which are the ones I've just sown today, and all the tips and tricks and interplanting, recommended varieties, how to sow, pricking out, potting on, all that sort of thing, what not to do as well, how to feed and water, etc. So if you're interested in that, then check it out in the description below. So the compost I'm using is Levington's Professional Seed Compost, and I think it's F2. I really like it. It's extremely consistent, and I've never had a bad batch, and I've had a lot of these batches. It's kind of expensive if you buy it from somewhere like Amazon, but if you look in my book, you'll find a source that's really good, well priced, LS Systems, and they certainly deliver in my area. And they're about a quarter of the price of Amazon. So yeah, so that's what I like to use, and it means I never have to sieve or anything like that, because it's just nice and fine, and I'm basically just crumbling it up with my fingers. And I kind of, if I can eliminate a step like sieving, then I'll always do that, because I don't really like these little fiddly jobs very much. So I'm always looking forward to doing them, but I'm always looking forward to getting them over with. I actually sowed the potatoes in this as well, because the potatoes won't be in this compost for very long. That's the bag that I happen to have open. So I will just show you how I water, because I want to make sure that you get the right idea in terms of the amount of water. Looks like I put too much of that in. Anyway. That's enough. Just do it in here. If we go up and down a couple of times. I've actually got now an Amazon store where you can get hold of all of these sort of things. So these sort of trays, these labels, these pens, these bottle tops, all that sort of thing. So if you're interested in that, I'll put a link in the description of this video. So I will carry on watering this and then I'll show you a few other bits and pieces. So I've just popped these seeds on the windowsill in the conservatory. Now I normally wouldn't do that because it can get a bit hot in here and I like my seeds to germinate with a nice stable temperature, but it's a bit rainy at the moment, and so I'll wait, and if it gets warm and sunny then I'll just move them into a bedroom or something like that. But for now they'll be happy there. I can just keep an eye on them. So if you want to know a bit more about sowing seeds, then I recommend you go to the basics section of my book and you will find a guide to sowing as well as a guide to growing with lights and lots of other stuff as well. But the guide to sowing is the one that's pretty relevant to what we've just talked about today. And it goes through all the equipment that I use for sowing, all the tips and tricks, compost and all that sort of thing. So yeah, do take a look at that if you're more interested, and lots more videos as well, of course. I hope you like this quick video. My name's Steve. This is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.